I knew the marriage was over the second I saw my fiancée on my best man's phone, still in her wedding robe, still wearing the smile she practiced for tomorrow, and very much not alone. My name is Nolan Pierce. I'm 32, a software architect who builds logistics systems for contractors who swear by duct tape and diesel. My family runs Pierce & Sons Materials, a regional building supply company in central Pennsylvania. On paper, everything about my life lined up like rebar. A booming business I'd been modernizing for 3 years, a warehouse that ran like a metronome, and a wedding scheduled for the next afternoon that was supposed to stitch our family to our largest client for the next decade. Her name was Lena Hart. Her father owns Hartwell Development Group, a polished, influential real estate firm that eats up municipal projects the way a backhoe eats dirt. Everyone called our engagement a perfect fit, my software and distribution plan hardwiring into their development pipeline. Love and synergy, signed and notarized. I loved her truly. I also understood the chessboard. Being clear-eyed about both had always been my strength. Apparently, it was also my blind spot. The night before the wedding, 100 people packed into the bar at the Ridgecrest Grand, a polished hotel near the river with chandeliers that looked like inverted fireworks. We'd just finished the rehearsal dinner. I was making small talk with a few of my dad's clients, men who smell like lumber and carry the sun in their wrinkles, when Evan Miles, my best friend since freshman year and the best man, slid into the booth beside me. Evan never met a password he couldn't forget. He set his phone on the table face up and drifted toward the bathroom. The screen blinked, a message preview from Lena. The first words were enough to make my pulse stumble. Loved what you sent. I shouldn't have looked. I did. My thumb moved before conscience did. The thread opened. A video sat there, still flagged, sent 3 minutes ago, tagged with a heart. Evan's face filled the first frame, smirking, cocky, whispering something I didn't need to hear. The camera turned. A bed, white robe, a freckled shoulder I knew better than my own reflection. Lena laughed. She tugged him closer. It wasn't the grainy nightmare of suspicion. It was high-definition betrayal, recorded in the gold-trimmed suite 2 floors up where she was supposed to be sleeping alone, dreaming of forever with me. I didn't slam the phone down. I didn't scream. For 3 full seconds, I felt heat crawl up my spine, the kind that makes hands curl into fists and sees red. Then a colder instinct slid in like an engine clicking from idle to gear. Don't go to jail for them. Never do the stupid thing first. I airdropped the file to my own phone, backstopped the thread to a cloud drive I control, and set Evan's phone exactly where he'd left it. When he came back, he grinned like a man who believed tomorrow belonged to him. Nerves? He asked, sipping his beer. Me? I smiled. You know I plan everything. When you prepare, there's nothing to fear. He laughed, and for the first time in years I heard how hollow it was. I left early, hugged 100 people as if I were hugging the edge of a cliff, and climbed the stairs to the room where vows waited on a nightstand. Lena texted me a photo, her hand on a silk hanger, the dress draped like a promise. Can't wait to be your wife, she wrote. Tomorrow will be unforgettable, I replied. Truth doesn't always need adjectives. I didn't sleep. I built. People think revenge is an impulse, a flash. What they don't understand is that precision is better than rage. Logistics, my boring, dependable craft, sits on timing. Forklifts, staging, drivers who show at 5:35 a.m., not 5:36, pallets slotted to the inch. The same principles work when your life is burning. At the small metal desk by the window, I pulled up the guest spreadsheet I'd compiled for shuttle schedules and seating charts and converted it into a routing list. 200 numbers. I spun up a temporary server on a provider that would vanish the instance on command, then wrote a thin veneer to deliver unique, time-locked links by SMS, triggered by a signal that only I could send. I queued the video. I queued a second cut containing only Lena's voice saying, "Lock the door," and the first 20 seconds of Evan whispering her name. I cached both redundantly. Redundancy is the difference between almost and done. I read the message thread end to end. It didn't start last night. It started weeks earlier, lunches that turned into late ideation, meetings that somehow required hotel rooms. Jokes about me I don't think were meant to be jokes. I archived it all. Proof, metadata, timestamps. Not to smear them online, not to threaten. To be sure no one could turn me into the unhinged groom. I wasn't unhinged. I was steady in a way that scared me. At 5, I showered and shaved. At 6, I walked 3 blocks to a diner with a cracked sign and ate eggs I didn't taste. By 10, the barbershop downstairs had me in a chair, and I stared at the mirror and thought how strange it is to look normal when you're about to hit detonate. Evan tied my tie at noon. His hands never trembled. "You're unusually zen," he said. I was a wreck at my sister's wedding, just holding the ring. "Planning," I said, and for a warped moment we could have been 20 again, hunched over a pizza, hacking a competition together at 3 in the morning. He clapped my shoulder, proud. Some betrayals arrive with horns. This one wore a friendly hand. Lena called at 1:30. "I'm counting down," she whispered, voice syrup and sunlight. "Promise you won't cry?" "I won't cry," I said. "I promise you that." By 3:30, the shuttle buses disgorged a version of Old Money onto the stone walkways of Maple Bridge Arboretum. The Wren River slid behind the dais in a belt of high August light, and rows of white chairs faced petals and fabric like a magazine spread. Our officiant, Pastor Meredith, shook my hand as if I were already forgiven. My mother dabbed her eyes when she looked at me. My father nodded once, the way he does before we lift something heavy. Hartwell Development's executives kissed Lena's mother on both cheeks. A state senator slipped into the second row. Deals hovered in the air like heat. I checked my phone once, the way a conductor taps his baton. Everything waited. Then she appeared. Lena walked out from the shade on her father's arm, and every person stood, and every camera rose, and wind tugged a few strands of her hair loose so she looked like a poem. It's astonishing how love can live beside fury, how it can ache on the way to being amputated. She had no idea she was walking toward a cliff. She smiled at me, wide and private, the way she did the first time she fell asleep on my shoulder. For 2 steps I almost believed I could shelve the bomb and pretend. Then Evan shifted beside me, holding the ring like a talisman, and the world snapped back into focus. The music quieted. Laughs died. Pastor Meredith opened his folder. "Welcome," he said, "to the covenant we witnessed today." We passed through the readings, the brief homily, the collective inhale. When he asked if I had prepared vows, he handed me the microphone with both hands. "Nolan." "Yes," I said. "I prepared something very specific." A flicker ran across Lena's face. Expectation, joy, a little fear of public emotion. Braver men might have made a speech. I had built a trigger. "Lena," I said, looking only at her. "Last night, I learned a truth. This is not a place for lies." And then I pressed the execution command with my thumb. 400 pockets hummed and chirped in waves. Heads dipped like sunflowers. The first gasp came from the back, sharp enough to make 2 front-row guests flinch. Another rustle, growing. The little question mark between Lena's eyebrows turned to a crease. On the second row, one of Hartwell's executives glanced at his wife's phone, went white, and put a fist to his mouth. The senator muttered "Jesus" into lace. "People will say I'm being dramatic," I said, steady into the microphone. "I'm being accurate." Lena snatched for my wrist. I stepped away. "Please," she whispered. "Please, not like this." Evan looked down. The ring box trembled. "Nolan, it's—" "Don't insult me in public and ask for privacy," I said, not unkindly. "You chose your hour. I choose mine." Lena's mother stood so fast her chair scraped. "This is some misunderstanding," she announced to the rows, trying to grab the narrative by its throat. "We'll sort this out as a family. Watch the link," I said, "then decide what to call it." In the third row, my mother made a sound I'd never heard, small and animal and broken. My father put a hand on her shoulder without taking his eyes off Evan. Pastor Meredith tried to cut in with something about grace. The sound system faithfully delivered every syllable of the unraveling. Evan reached for me. "Man, it was a mistake. 3 weeks of mistakes," I said. "Multiple hotels. Multiple recordings. If you're going to burn down a friendship, at least don't narrate it into your camera." Lena's father, Arthur Hartwell, a man who believes you can out-argue gravity, stepped into the aisle. "Shut this down," he barked at me. "We have clients here. This is bigger than your feelings." "That sentence," I said, "summarizes your entire approach to life. You will not humiliate my daughter. She did that without my help. I didn't raise my voice. Rage is noisy. Truth can whisper and still level a city." "Scott, please," Lena said, reaching, face blotched, voice tearing. "We can talk after. I made a mistake." You made a pattern, I said. And you got pregnant making it, if your mother is to be believed. A collective flick, like a flock pivoting midair. People stared at her womb as if they could see algebra. She blinked hard, lips shaking, tears suddenly surging as if grief might buy time. I didn't want to tell you today, she said. It was going to be a surprise. Surprises are for birthdays, I said. For this, we use math. We test paternity. Lena stared at me as if I'd slapped her. She looked at Evan. He didn't look back. On the front row, Arthur Hartwell swore into a fist, then hissed, "We will handle this." You can't sand numbers, I said. Steel either holds or it buckles. For a moment, no one moved. The planet we lived on tilted 3 degrees. There was no music anymore, no curated smile lighting, just the sound of insects in the grass and the soft plunk of the Ren River touching rocks as it has for 1,000 years, unimpressed by humans. I lifted the ring from my finger and set it on the linen-draped table beside the Unity candle Lena picked in a boutique with her mother while I measured forklift aisles to the inch. I put the microphone down with care. I turned to my parents and gave my mother the smallest nod. I walked out through the aisle we'd planned for an entrance and used for an exit. Someone shouted my name. Someone else, maybe the senator, maybe an uncle, said, "Let him go." The sun hit my face like a dare. I breathed and kept walking. I didn't run. I also didn't look back. At the hotel, I packed with the same care I use when staging a delivery route. Methodical, no wasted steps. I put my laptop on top of my clothes because I needed it more than socks. I wrote a note for the front desk to send the floral deposit to the groundskeepers instead of refunding it. I texted my assistant, Tessa, schedule 2 weeks off. Forward only emergencies. If anyone asks for a statement, say no comment. Also, let the warehouse know I'll handle the Monday audit remotely. She responded with a single question mark and a heart 20 minutes later when the video hit her phone like everybody else's. By midnight, I was 30 miles west with the windows down and the AC blasting, driving toward darkness until the high-gloss version of my life fell behind the rearview mirror like a billboard for a town I no longer lived in. The fallout arrived on schedule. Truth spins faster than rumor when it comes with attachments. The link I sent the guests pinballed into other hands, then other networks. I hadn't posted a thing to the public, but you can't privately detonate a bomb at a 200-person event where half the room trades favors for a living. By Monday morning, the video threaded group chats like ivy. By Tuesday, my phone was a machine that only played apologies and speeches. I shut it off and kept driving. 2 weeks after the implosion, when I was parked in a motel by a lake in Minnesota, Arthur Hartwell called. I answered because I was curious whether his voice could get through gravel. "Come to my office," he said. "No hello. We need to talk like men." "Men," I said. "Don't ask other men to raise their grandchildren. You will not speak to me like that. You're used to buying respect," I said. "I don't sell it." "Nolan, test the baby," I said. "Call me when you have a result you can say out loud." He hung up. 4 days later, my assistant forwarded a brief email from someone on Hartwell's staff with the subject line, "Paternity confirmation." In the body of the email, confirmed Mr. Miles is the biological father. Please respect the family's privacy. I stared at the screen until the letters stopped swimming. I didn't feel triumph. I felt clean. Contracts shifted. On week 3, a mid-sized municipal project quietly slid from Hartwell's docket to a competitor's. On week 4, a large healthcare build paused for review. For the first time in years, the men I grew up admiring, the ones who taught me to listen to weather reports like Bibles, stopped treating the Hartwell name like a golden ticket. I didn't cheer. I went for a run until my chest hurt and my lungs burned and sweat felt like baptism. Grief doesn't arrive in one chunk. It falls in the house like dust. I'd be cutting fruit at a motel counter when a memory would cave in the roof. Lena sitting cross-legged on my couch, arguing with a documentary as if it could hear her, and I'd stand there stupid, knife in hand, staring at a wall and thinking nothing, absolutely nothing, except this hurts. So I did what I always do with pain, sorted inventory. Hindsight's a cruel auditor. Every small silence I'd shrugged off walked back through the door wearing neon. The odd glance between them at a tasting. The night he texted her a meme and she laughed like he'd read her mind. The late brainstorm. Nothing damns by itself. Together, the pattern holds. I took the long way west, stopping where maps blur. I learned to sit with quiet in motel rooms that smelled like lemon and old cigarettes. I wrote code because code listens and returns exactly the truth you asked of it. In Montana, I watched a storm swallow half a horizon and felt, for the first time since the Isle, my chest open without hurting. 3 months after I left, I spoke at a construction tech conference in Boise, Idaho. Boring title. Packed room. Supply chain optimization, predictive staging, tolerances. Normal. After the talk, while I was taking questions about dynamic routing, a woman in a slate blazer with a chipped navy manicure raised her hand and said, "You're the first person here who admitted drivers are human beings and not boxes on a Gantt chart." I laughed. "That's because I grew up watching a man hold 2 lives in one calloused hand," I said. "You don't tell him his day is a spreadsheet." She waited by the aisle until the crowd thinned. "Maya Quinn," she said, offering her hand. "Information security. We met once. Freshman year. You beat me at Mario Kart and refused to gloat." I remembered her as soon as she smiled. The years had sharpened her, not softened her. She had the kind of eyes that appear to catalog and then hand you a kinder version of yourself than the one you brought to the table. We went for coffee. We didn't speak about betrayal. I didn't want to be a tragedy she had to comfort. We spoke about buses we missed and the open-source project she shepherded at midnight and my father's insistence that bolt patterns are love languages if you're fluent. She didn't flinch when I said, "I loved someone who didn't love me back the same way. It's simple, and it isn't." She said, "People mistake proximity for fidelity." Her voice didn't pity me. It respected the wound and didn't poke it. We wrote each other. FaceTimes at odd hours. Articles with "This made me think of you" notes. The first time she flew east to see me, she met my parents in the kitchen. My mother has repainted the same shade of soft yellow 4 times, because sunlight should be baked into a house. My father shook her hand, then told me to go get something heavy from the truck so he could talk to her privately. Mothers are subtle. Fathers are forklift forks. 6 months later, I moved to Boise. Pierce and Sons no longer needed my body in Pennsylvania. Our systems ran from servers and tablets on forklifts, not from my desk. I still flew back monthly. I still walked the warehouse with Dad and talked to drivers by name and looked at pallets like old friends. But my life drifted west into mountains that rearranged every morning's light. Maya and I took our time. We were deliberate the way you are after you've been hit by a truck you didn't see coming. We didn't perform. We didn't post. We built a life like the best houses are built. Footers first, checked twice, measured against something that doesn't lie. A year after my relocation, we stood in a clearing in the Sawtooth Range with 12 people who know how to be quiet and promised one another very little in words and everything in action. No string quartet. No corporate alliance. The air smelled like pine and lightning. When the officiant asked if we had vows, Maya said, "I will not punish you for other people's shadows." I said, "I will make our house a place where truth doesn't get lonely." We live small, which is to say we live precisely. We built a consulting practice that serves contractors who still write orders on receipt books and helps them not drown. Maya consults for hospitals and unions because she refuses to let bad actors bully the people we all pretend to clap for. We bought a house with a garage that is hers more than mine. 2 years in, our daughter arrived, a riot of curls and lungs. We named her Elodie because the name felt like a song. 2 years later, our son arrived, heavy and solemn, like an oath. Grant. I cry when I hold them sometimes and pretend it's because they drooled in my eye. Maya sees through me and doesn't call it out. I hear about Lena and Evan sometimes. People assume gossip is oxygen. It isn't. It's just stale air with perfume. A former coworker texted me a screenshot once of a local business journal. Hartwell Group loses city center contract to competitor after reputational headwinds. Another article mentioned leadership restructuring. Translation: the tide went out, and we saw who had pockets and who didn't. I don't cheer. I don't mourn. They live in a house not far from the Arboretum where we almost build a life. They have a boy with Evan's grin who deserves a world not built on lies. They share a mortgage. They share a silence, I imagine. They married after the paternity test made everything else look like farce. Necessity isn't glue, but it can be duct tape. Once, around the 6th anniversary of that bright afternoon turned eclipse, I flew back east to see my folks and pick up a cracked compressor a client had temporarily borrowed. I saw Lena at a shopping center in town, hair flatter, eyes redder. She was holding her son's hand and staring at a display of sneakers like they were equations she couldn't solve. She turned and saw me. We both froze. "Nolan," she said, as if my name were a confession. We stood within arm's reach and 100 miles apart. "Lena, I'm sorry," she blurted, too loud. Her son looked up at her. "For all of it. You were a good man. I was. Human," I offered. "And reckless. Both things can be true." Her chin trembled. "You didn't deserve it." "No," I said. "I didn't. But I also didn't deserve to live the rest of my life as a reaction to it." She nodded. Tears slicked her lashes. She looked like a woman who understood the cost of math after the math is done. "I hope you're happy." "I am," I said. "And I hope you get whatever peace looks like for you." We parted with a small, sad smile. She didn't try to touch me. I didn't pretend to hate her. I walked out into a parking lot that smelled like hot tar and fries and felt the past turn a corner in my chest and keep walking, finally, without dragging me behind it. It would be tidy if I told you I never think of the aisle, never remember the sun like a witness, never wake to a dream where I keep the ring and say nothing and choose the slower destruction instead of the quick clean cut. It would also be fiction. Memory is a stubborn roommate. It leaves lights on and forgets to close doors. But it doesn't own the deed anymore. People ask me sometimes, quietly, when the others have drifted downstairs for more coffee, if I regret detonating the wedding in public. "You could have saved face," they say. "You could have walked away quietly." Saved whose face? I ask. Not mine. And if dignity requires me to cover a lie with a smile, that isn't dignity. That's PR. They ask how I knew I wouldn't regret it the second I pressed send. I didn't. I just knew my life couldn't be built on a foundation where the foreman was deceit. If people want to call that theatrical, they can. I call it symmetrical. You want the moral. You want the sentence that makes it worth it when your chest is a crater and your partner's voice is in someone else's mouth. Here it is. The most devastating revenge isn't destruction. It's design. It's refusing to live in the house betrayal built and drawing blueprints for somewhere sunlight can find you. It's building so carefully, so honestly, that people who once defined you become footnotes in your own story, and not even the interesting ones. They disappear into the index under things that taught me what to refuse. Pierce and Sons thrives. Without the Hartwell yoke, we stop pretending to be something shinier than a proud, stubborn supply company that shows up on time and tells the truth about delays. Our on-time delivery rate is north of 98%. Dad still scowls when a pallet isn't flush. Mom still sends the forklift guys home with apple cake that could bribe a judge. The drivers rib me when I visit. Tech boy. And tell me they like the app one made because it spells their names correctly and doesn't require 3 clicks to log a flat tire. It's the sincerest praise I'll ever receive. Maya and I have a rule. No secrets that turn into rooms we don't enter. When something hard shows up, money, jealousy, the exhaustion that makes you mean, we say it out loud. We fight fair. We hold each other to truth when the easier thing would be flattery. When we are tired, we make tea. When we are very tired, we order pad thai and forgive the things said after 10 p.m. We choose to tell the whole story while it's small. You'd be amazed how much that changes. Not just what you live through, but who you become in the living. Sometimes, late, when the house is quiet and the dishwasher hums its white noise and the boy has finally stopped testing gravity from the couch, I stand at the back door and look out at the yard. The porch light throws a cone onto the grass. Beyond it, the dark says the same thing it said on that hot, bright day when I walked away from everything everyone thought I wanted. Step carefully, choose, keep going. If there's anything that day taught me, it's that I can survive without the version of respect that comes from other people's comfort. I can withstand the cold that rushes in when you open the door truth demands you open. I can draw a line and stand on my side of it even when it rains. If you're standing at the edge of something you didn't choose, holding proof you never asked to carry, here is the only advice I have that isn't a platitude. Be precise. Don't burn because you want warmth. Burn because you want light. And then use that light to build a life so clear, so stubbornly good, that anyone who once believed they could define you by what they did to you ends up as a line item on a page your children will never read. That's not rage. That's architecture.